Yeah, and so I mean, it sounds to me like it's again just relating back to the intentionality behind what you're doing. I think it sounds to me like just the ability to have that foresight has really helped you be intentional with what you're doing. Because I mean, you kind of glossed over like the idea that like you started and then 3 years later you're leading workshops for NatGeo, and I think to most people that's like an insurmountable task in order to complete. And I mean, I think that of course for almost anyone it would be. But I think that just understanding like your intention behind it, that definitely helps kind of understand how that path was laid. Was
Well,
there?
sure. I mean, really quickly, just interjecting in there, like, I mean, there's absolute truth in what you're saying, and the intention and whatnot definitely came. I wouldn't say that it was necessarily there all the time because early on, I was like everyone else starting out, not really sure what I was doing, trying to figure it out as I was going. I always tried to make sure that I was moving forward, even if I didn't know where that direction was going early on. And when it came to the Nat Geo thing, it actually isn't as crazy as it sounds. It was I had been traveling around for a few years at the time. I had a decent portfolio. I came home after living in the Himalayas for a few months, working on some projects with the Sherpa communities. And waiting in the mail when I got home was a pamphlet for Nat Geo's student expedition program that they were launching. And I looked at the leaders, I looked at what they were doing, and I was like, you know what? I could do this. And so I had the confidence, I had, I had the portfolio, I had the desire to want more and to sit there and look at that opportunity and said, why not me? If it's not going to be me, it's going to be someone else, right? And so I then, figured out who I needed to talk to and reached out and sent in a resume and then had a video interview and had another interview. And then I initially got hired to work in Belize. And then they called me back and said, hey, we have an opportunity in the Galapagos. And before they finished the sentence, I was like, I'm in. Um, and so I think again, there's a, there's an over romanticized notion of life of a travel photographer from social media and all sorts of other stuff. But at the same time, there's almost like a reverse stigma that thinks that the successes such as finding an opportunity to work for NatGeo is unattainable for people as they're just starting out. I don't think that's the case. I think that having the drive, having the confidence and the humbleness to admit that you obviously you're not perfect and you have things to work on, mixed in with talent can provide immense opportunities for anyone, including today. I mean, a lot of people think that the photo industry is kind of shut down with, COVID and what's happened over the last years. I don't think that's the case. I think there's actually more money to be made now than ever before, but it's going to be in different revenue streams that you might have been used to. And right now we're at the precipice where all those old revenue streams are old, a year old before COVID, are starting to open back up. So there's even more opportunity. So I think a lot of it's your mindset. When a lot of people get into photography or thinking about doing photography, whether it's, on the side or for a living, that they think that the business side of things are something that they will never be good at. And so they put this negative connotation on it instead of looking at it as an opportunity or a way, including to be creative, which is what I think of business as. I love making pitches. I love putting together proposals. I love talking to companies and pitching ideas. And I think that if you go into it with that mindset of the opposite, where you're like, I hate this. Oh, I'm not very good at this. You never put in the energy. You never put in the effort to learn how to make a proper pitch or how to do a cold email or, to formulate a plan or a project that you want to work on. And then, you just kind of get, despair of being rejected with not ever actually pushing yourself out there. And I think that's where a lot of people are. They kind of expect success to come to them rather than to have the will or the stubbornness or whatever you want to call it to put themselves out there and kind of see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think there's a huge amount of ability to kind of have that tenacity to take a leap and jump out and just really see what happens. Because to your point, I mean, having that confidence to know that you have a portfolio put together that you feel or that is comparable or at least on par with some of the other educators that are in that space, I think that's a huge step. But it's also, I think, something that is attainable despite how many years you've been doing photography. There's not necessarily a gate that's preventing you from making the ask.
Absolutely.
I think especially if you're getting to that point to where you are, you're seeing something in the mail and you're like, I could do that. Or I feel that I'm confident enough or capable enough that I can be there.
Sure.
Yeah, having that is huge. And I think
it helps
building
for sure.
up to that is probably where a lot of people are having a hard time getting to. They're kind of suffering from the artist's own dilemma of, not liking their own work and
Sure.
Being their own worst critic.
Well, I think that's, it's a really interesting segue into the topical conversation of, skill and competition. Like, I will let everyone watching right now on a little secret. There will always be someone that is a better photographer than you, and there will always be someone that's a worse photographer than you. Like, it shouldn't be an excuse to not try to do something because you feel you aren't good enough or aren't worthy enough. I think too much of that is more of a societal issue that we have, not to get too, exocentric, but this idea that we have this external validation that you need in order to feel confident in what you're doing. I think that we as a society, even we as an industry, have this idea that failure is this negative thing, is this horrible thing that no one wants to fail, which I think is not realistic. I think if you actually look at any of the most successful photographers in our industry, entrepreneurs in any industry, in any market vertical, you're going to see that the vast majority, 99% of those individuals, had tons of failed ideas that never came to realization, and they learned from them, ultimately leading to their successful ideas, which allowed them to now position themselves in a place where they could, make $300,000 or $400,000 as a photographer a year, or doing X, Y, or Z, or whatever it is.
Sure.
But I think it's a really important thing is to understand that. I hear that a lot, I guess is what I'm saying. I hear that, is this good enough or whatnot? Like, I think at some point you just need to push yourself out there and come back to that, kind of business 101 saying that if you never ask the question, if you never put yourself out there, the answer will always be no. If you sit there and you say, if you don't ask, am I good enough to be hired by NatGeo? It doesn't matter because the answer is no, because you never ask the question. You never put yourself out there. Same thing could be hired. Should I be hired to shoot this person's wedding? Should I be hired to do this project for this tourism board? Like, if you're not willing to ask the question, if you're not willing to put yourself out there, then you can't expect to find success in this industry or any other, to be fair.
There's a phrase that really resonated with me that has been kind of just stirring around in my brain lately. And it's something that I'm even trying to internalize myself. And it's the idea that I have failures, but I am not a failure. So like, you can fail and you can try things and you can continually have things fail, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a failure as long as you're continuing to keep trying something else.
Absolutely. And you're learning from it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that once you relinquish all control and then you're like, all right, I can't do anything, then that's when it gets to the point to where you need to kind of reevaluate. But as long as you're continually out there, like taking a swing at it, like you have fails, but you're not a failure. And I think that could be a perfect analogy, especially with something like photography, where, I mean, there's always going to be more shots. There's always going to be more things to take pictures of. So, hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you'd like to make sure that you don't miss any of our future videos, be sure to click the subscribe button and ring that bell down below to turn on notifications. You can also click or tap right here in order to see more full episodes and clips. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Now get out there and shoot your shot.